Hello and welcome to Focus Asia from our studios in Hong Kong. I'm Mark New. We begin tonight on health matters and a problem that's fast becoming a global epidemic. Obesity afflicts as many as 1.7 billion people around the world, and at least 2.5 million die every year from weight-related illness. Doctors are already seeing the knock-on effects. The number of people with diabetes is soaring, with 300 million predicted to be sufferers by 2025. What's more alarming is that half the patients will be in Asia, where victims are getting younger and younger. Susan Yu reports.
Patrick and Samuel are heading to the local shopping center. It's a favorite pastime for the Hong Kong youngsters. Fast food chains abound at the mall, where both can indulge in a quick meal. Patrick admits he's addicted to Western fast foods. He says he'll practically eat anything, anywhere, at any time.
Why do you like fast food so much?
Well, taste, convenient, you can get it anywhere, like 7-Eleven, McDonald's. Usually, regular pizza, I get a Pizza Hut, I can eat like 3 regular pieces. It's easy. You don't have to run anywhere just to find a shop.
Patrick is aware he stands out at school. At 165 centimeters, the 13-year-old weighs in at 80 kilograms.
Usually the heaviest in school.
How does that make you feel?
Disappointed sometimes, but don't judge the book by its cover,
Do you want to lose weight? Do you really want to try to lose weight?
Yeah.
What's the hardest part? What's the hardest thing about that?
Exercising.
Patrick is not alone. Throughout Asia, children are becoming fatter, more sedentary, and more at risk of developing diabetes.
It's very common for children to overeat. My generation of children overate, but we didn't get fat. And the reason we didn't get fat is that we spent many, many hours outdoors in physical play.
Health authorities are taking the problem seriously. Hong Kong will soon launch a territory-wide weight screening program for youngsters. Doctors predict that 15% of those screened will be classified as overweight. 10% of those will have diabetes without knowing it. Diabetes is caused by the body's inability to control the level of sugar in the blood. Sufferers are either unable to produce enough insulin to provide them with energy, or they're unable to use their own insulin effectively. If left untreated, it can result in kidney damage, blindness, and other medical problems. And now, health experts are noticing another disturbing trend. Children as young as 9 years old are getting the adult form of the disease, known as type 2 diabetes.
They have many, many reasons for staying at home all the time. They have to study harder for school. They have television, they have computers, and as a result they spend hours a day sitting.
Type 1 diabetes is most common amongst children worldwide. This form is thought to be inherited, and the onset of the disease is usually sudden. It occurs in people under the age of 30. In contrast, type 2 adult diabetes afflicts 90% of all diabetes cases. It can be genetic, but this form is usually caused by obesity, stress, and a sedentary lifestyle. Sufferers are normally over 40 years old, but this profile is changing at an alarming rate in Asia. Dr. Louis Lowe is treating 15 youngsters who are afflicted with adult diabetes.
When they are adolescents, they don't know, they don't show any fear. So most of them quite often default follow-up. You ask them to go onto a diet and they don't follow in your instructions. And that is our problem.
That's something we wanted to ask his patients and their parents about, but not one was willing to talk about their illness.
When the diagnosis is made, there's always this feeling of guilt. I think they are worried that they're going to be stigmatized and they would be isolated and neglected by their friends. In the Asian culture, I think a lot of the families would still prefer to keep their secrets within the family.
It's not just families who are finding it hard to accept. Some medical experts believe Asian governments must recognize the insidious problem of adolescent obesity before it's too late.
If you wait till the complications have developed, then the people with diabetes suffer much more, society suffers much more because they may not be able to work.
In the 1980s, Singapore discovered it had an obesity and diabetes problem. It went on the offensive, making sure government institutions knew how to tackle both through education and prevention campaigns. In schools, mandatory exercise and nutritional programs were launched for students screened out as overweight. Raghavan Mohan teaches at the Takji Primary School.
It's called Trim and Fit program, and it's aimed at children who are beyond their weight, and we monitor their weight at first by giving them a lot of exercise programs like morning runs and evening runs, and we also do a lot of exercise during the recess time, and then give them more healthy food like fruits and make them drink a lot of water.
The Trim and Fit program at the Takji Primary School has identified about 40 youngsters as overweight. It's roughly the same at other primary schools across the Lion City. The problem of overweight youngsters has caught the Singaporean government's attention. Its health ministry commissioned a 2-year study into the issue. The results were startling. It discovered that 10% of all school children were considered obese, and half that number were considered grossly obese. This, despite the fact that the government has had an anti-obesity campaign in place for decades.
Obviously, Singapore is unusual from this point of view, and as a result has had quite a good track record at the public health level in dealing with the problem in children, and also in dealing with the prevalence rate of diabetes, because in Singapore it was doubling through the 1970s, 1980s into the early 1990s, doubling every decade.
Ong Sang Kok has witnessed the changes firsthand. He's been teaching physical education in primary schools for more than 20 years. He believes the Singaporean lifestyle is a factor in the obesity equation.
In Singapore by itself, you find both parents working. No one is at home. We have children like that. No one is at home. So after school, they will go home to an empty house. And what is their meal? It's a McDonald's, you know. And every day is McDonald's.
Boys are twice as likely to become obese compared with girls. And according to the International Obesity Task Force, Asia has the highest percentage of overweight children in the world. It reports that Taiwan and Japan have the most number of adolescents who are obese. In Taiwan, 30% of boys are classified as overweight. In Japan, it's 20. In Singapore, it's about 15, while in Hong Kong, it's 10%.
China is obviously our biggest concern. With 1.3 billion people, it's potentially a real time bomb. And the issue in China is that the prevalence rates are now quite high in the big coastal eastern seaboard cities.
And it's in Shanghai, where an enterprising company has set up boot camps like this one for some of China's estimated 30 million children who are overweight. But for some parents, like Patrick's mother, the best line of defense is education.
I think it's more important is to educate him in selecting the right group of food to eat rather than enforcing or imposing any regulations, because he's old enough to know what he's doing.
Magdalena Yu also believes providing moral support helps.
I know in the bottom of his heart, he still feels that he's not one of them. He still feels, if he's in Hong Kong, he feels that, he's sort of like overweight and, he's not functioning as efficient as some other kids.
Although Patrick is struggling with his weight, he's been learning to appreciate the benefits of a well-balanced diet. He now exercises 3 times a week and is eating more vegetables and fruits. What's even sweeter is the payoff. He's grown 8 centimeters in the past year and a half without gaining any weight. That improves his chances of avoiding diabetes and winning his battle against the bulge.